Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome to a new game theory reaction, and this one is Poké Balls are killing Pokemon. Oh god, if I haven't heard, some version of this for a long time actually, now I'm thinking about it. I need to fill this up. But, okay, for something like this, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it's going to go in the same direction that people kind of go with when they're talking about, like, the transporters from Star Trek, where it's like, oh, the Pokeballs, like, they transform, like, the Pokemon into data, and then thus destroying the original matter, and each time you summon the Pokemon, it's just like a digital duplicate that's remade on the spot or something like that. Similar to how, like, people talk about, that with the transporters from Star Trek a lot of the times. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, I've watched game theory for a long time. I know all their tricks. Yeah, other than that, I can't really think of any specific way that Pokeballs would kill Pokemon. Because, I mean, they can, like, as for anybody who's ever actually played a Pokemon game before, the whole thing of, oh, throw the Pokeball, when it catches the Pokemon, it shakes around for a bit, and there's a chance that the Pokemon can escape the Pokeball before being completely caught. And even then, like, how... Again, if they were, like, turned into data or something like that, how would the whole, actually shaking and then release of a failed capture even work? I mean, if I remember correctly, I think I saw some really old art or something done that was actually official art where it showed the inside of a Pokeball, almost like a tiny little, like, paradise for the Pokemon or something like that. Though, I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen that. If I can find it, I'll put it up on the screen somewhere. But yeah, other than that, again, no idea what this could be about, so let's actually get into this then. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video linked to my film theory reaction. And yeah, if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because almost 3/4 of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my next big goal is hopefully at 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
This Pokeball is a death trap. These cute little balls designed to capture our beloved Pokemon will be the last thing our little friends see before they die. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that captures your heart with science. And today, loyal theorists, I come to you guys with my head hanging in shame. I've been host of this channel for over a year and a half at this point, and yet, somehow, in that time, I've not done a single Pokemon episode. No, you don't count. This franchise was my childhood. It's the series I've probably put the most hours into in my 3 decades of existence. How have I never covered this series properly? Well, friends, that ends today. With Legend ZA just being released, it re-sparked my passion for this franchise and made me want to go back to one of the most basic parts of the series, the humble Pokeball. You might be wondering, what is there to talk about when it comes to these things? They've made us do the same catching tutorial about a dozen times. You throw the Pokeball, Pokemon goes in the ball, 3 shakes, done. But have you ever stopped to wonder just how all this happens? I mean, these are devices capable of capturing sentient elemental beings against their will. That's some MCU levels of technological advancement that they make out of fruit and sell to 10-year-olds.
Well, I mean, I think they used to be made out of fruit. They've kind of moved on from that, I hope. Though, if they did, that would mean that they were, like, completely renewable. Interesting. At the same time, though, I mean, with everything that goes on, I mean, like, with the legendary Pokemon, yes, there is the whole aspect of them being, literal, like, gods and deity-like beings. But at the same time, like, with the exception of, like, what's shown in the anime, most of them literally just act like animals. So, I mean, granted, super powered animals, but still.
Watching the anime growing up, I'd always assumed that the beam of light that came from the Pokeball somehow digitized the Pokemon so that they could get stored in the PC. But then, while I was replaying Legends Arceus in the build-up to ZA, I noticed this line from the professor. You'll recall, of course, that Pokemon possess the odd power to shrink themselves down. With the Pokeballs we craft, we can make use of that power to catch them. What?
I'm sorry, what? So, wait, they're literally just being the uncanny ability to shrink themselves down. What? Okay, actually, I mean, thinking about it, that does kind of lead credence to to the thing I was talking about before, where like the official art showed that, oh, inside every Pokeball is just like a perfect little like living area, like habitat, like. But they really shrink themselves. What?
What? They just shrink? That feels so hand-wavy. Like the kind of thing you tell a 10-year-old to sort of justify the whole capturing creatures against their will thing. Don't ask questions, Timmy. You've got to catch them all. I mean, I suppose this is a game for kids, but this is game theory. And the truth is, while at first that explanation feels like a slap in the face, it may be grounded in plausible explanations. It's just a shame that those plausible explanations are also the things that are going to kill not just our little friends, but all of us. First, we have to address the whole shrinking thing. At first glance, it seems like a simplified explanation of how Pokeballs can work in the Hisui region. A region that takes place in the distant past with seemingly no advanced technology. But considering all the other strange abilities that Pokemon possess, like the ability to literally explode without dying, is it that ridiculous of an idea that...
I mean, I could see it just being what they thought was going on. Like, like, a perfect example was like germ theory when it came to like disease. For the longest time, people didn't think germs were even a thing. They knew people got sick, but they had like the idea of like, oh, like harmful vapors and having like imbalances in your various like biles and stuff like that. Having it literally be the Pokemon shrinking that is just weird.
They can all shrink. Pokemon does literally stand for pocket monsters, after all. How did they get that name before the invention of Pokeballs without demonstrating some pocket-fitting abilities? There's even a move that Pokemon can learn straight up called Minimize. So there is clearly some precedent for it, but it's actually much more scientific than that. For a moment, let's put on our evolution caps. No, not that kind of evolution, like real, biological evolution. In the real world, there are 4 main reasons why an organism might develop a seemingly wacky ability. In biology, we call these the 4 Fs. Feeding, fighting, fleeing, and mating.
Fornication,
and of these 4 options...
What, you couldn't have said fornication? Like, really? Like, come on.
Fleeing is the most logical explanation for this shrinkage. Plenty of creatures in our world have evolved to have the means of escape that at first glance seem quite ridiculous. But hey, if it can help you get away enough to survive, it's worth it. Many types of lizards, like the anole lizard, will detach their own tail if a predator takes a chomp at it, allowing them to make a daring escape. Likewise, pufferfish balloon into a giant ball of spikes and toxins to avoid becoming something else's snack. But when it comes to bizarre escape acts, nobody beats the humble sea cucumber.
Oh yeah, okay, if I remember correctly, I think the sea cucumber specifically just spits out its entire digestive system or something like that. It's like really weird.
When threatened, the slow as molasses cukes will, and I hope you're not eating, they will literally fire their intestines out of their butts. This sticky and toxic substance can get caught in whatever is trying to eat it, giving the cucumber just enough time to make it out alive. Man, talk about spilling your guts. And if that's sounding a little familiar to the Pokemon world, yes, this little trick is the inspiration behind Pyukumuku's ability, Innards Out. You know, the sea cucumber Pokemon. Wait a minute, if Pyukumuku shoots its intestines out of there, then that means this part of it is... that uncomfortable thought.
Okay, well, I mean, the whole thing, I think sea cucumbers, I don't think they have mouths. I think their anuses and their mouths are literally like the same orifice. It's just food goes in, gets digested, and then gets expelled as waste.
Aside, the point I'm trying to make here is that while shrinking oneself down to avoid predators may seem like a bit of overkill compared to other things real animals have done to protect their hides, it's not really that crazy.
Also, something I just recently learned was that apparently, like, in the original Pokemon, like originally how it was supposed to be, like Pokemon were a very new thing. Like it was a world where, it still had like normal animals, but then Pokemon just seemingly come out of nowhere. That's part of the reason why you had like Professor Oak like sending out 10-year-olds like, oh, go hunt down like these like brand new creatures that just seemingly appeared out of nowhere so we can kind of, study them.
And you know what? The more I think about this, the more I realize that Pokemon shrinkage helps explain things in the world of Pokemon that just never made any logical sense. I'm sure many of you have had thoughts like this, ideas that seem crazy until you lay out the facts and talk to other people about them. Or are you the kind of person who just enjoys debating these ideas? I'm actually at the first chance you get. Well, what if I told you that we've made something specifically for you, while also making theorizing competitive? Because of course we did. We're gamers after all. Introducing our brand new tabletop game, Just a Theory. Gather your friends, draw a card, and come up with the craziest theories from across the theoryverse, while trying to convince your friends in order that you can collect pieces of the theorist logo. Think of it like Trivial Pursuit meets Cards Against Humanity, but instead of dirty jokes or random pop quizzes, you're coming up with theories about things like, what's the worst material for a swimsuit? What's the most creative way to cook a burger? And if Freddy Fazbear had a diary, what would his most recent entry say? That last one absolutely keeps me up at night.
Okay, I mean, that sounds interesting. This is going to be one of those ones you can only get online, right? For a limited amount of time.
I wonder if Matt knows now that he's voicing Toy Bonnie in the movie. There may even be a little theorist surprise hiding inside. So put your theorist skills to the test and get your copy of Just a Theory today at Walmart.com or at a Walmart near you.
Wait, it's in Walmart? Really? Huh, okay.
Now, let's start with an easy one. Why does Pokemon being able to shrink make sense? Have you ever stopped to think about how when you walk into tall grass, you can't actually see where the Pokemon is until you step into them? Even in the new games where some Pokemon are visible, when you walk into grass, there is a chance you'll find a Pokemon that isn't visible initially. Like, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to see an entire Snorlax chilling behind a 2-foot blade of grass long before I walked up to it, unless the Pokemon are all shrunk down, hiding, avoiding detection from predators, or overzealous 10-year-olds. It's only after we step in the grass and presumably on top of them that they spring into full size and get ready for battle. Speaking of battles, why can't I catch a Pokemon after I knock it out? Shouldn't it be unable to wiggle free? Well, not if shrinking is something they need to be awake to do. As we know now, no shrinking means that Pokeballs can't capture anything. So if we accidentally one-hit KO our would-be HM Mule, then it probably wouldn't be able to shrink to fit inside the ball. It's unconscious. I gotta say, at this point in my research, I was totally shocked. By doing just a little bit of digging, not only could tiny pocket monsters be a totally legitimate defense mechanism, but it also helps fill in some of the series' biggest plot holes. However, notice how despite all of these Pokemon having the ability to shrink whenever they want, they don't do it all of the time for their protection. Especially in the newer games where you just see them walking around outside. Why? Because shrinking a living creature down to microscopic size comes with some uncomfortable side effects. Let's use my favorite Pokemon Eevee as an example. As it shrinks down, everything about it shrinks. Its little ears, its tail, and yes, its eyes. The reason that humans and most animals are able to see in the first place is because light rays enter our eyes through our pupils. As Eevee shrinks down, the pupils will also shrink, allowing less light to pass through, leading to its vision becoming darker and darker. If the pupils manage to get smaller than the wavelength of visible light, around 400 nanometers, then absolutely no light would pass through and the captured Pokemon would live a life in total darkness.
I mean, you say that as if, if I'm just going to go along with, the whole shrinking idea here for a moment. You say that as if, the Pokemon shrink uniformly. Like, for all we know, as they shrink, they could literally get chibi where, like things like their eyes and stuff don't shrink as much as, like, the rest of them, so they get, like, really weird proportions. Hey, for all we know, that might literally be where chibis came from, in the Pokemon universe.
Think about that the next time you send a Pokemon to the box never to see the light of day again, literally. A similar issue would arise when it comes to sound as well. At that scale, Eevee's cry would be so small that our ears wouldn't be able to pick it up, and sounds coming from our voices would be more like shockwaves than audible communication. But being unable to see or hear would be the least of Eevee's troubles. For one, Eevee would have a tough time just trying to maintain its own body temperature. If Eevee were to shrink to 1/10 of its size, that would mean that its surface area would decrease by a factor of 100 and its volume would decrease by a factor of 1000 thanks to the square cube law. Because surface area shrinks with the square of the radius, but volume, it shrinks with the cube of the radius.
Okay, but alternatively, you're also assuming that this is actually what Pokemon do. Like, they've evolved to do this in the first place. So who's to say that their metabolism also doesn't change as they get smaller? I mean, another reason why they might not just stay smaller all the time is because, you know, as they get smaller, their metabolism speeds up so they can still stay warm, but with that, you know, speed up of metabolism means they have to eat more food. I mean, there's a reason why, you know, hummingbirds are, like, at any given point only like 10 to 15 minutes away from starvation at all times.
That means that Eevee would have a relatively tiny body to generate heat, but enough surface area to radiate away all of its body heat and fast. In order to maintain its body heat enough to, you know, not die, it would have to eat the equivalent of its body weight or more just to prevent shutting down from hypothermia.
Wait, no, wait a second, wait, they're getting this wrong, because I just realized, wait, so surface area is allowing for the heat to dissipate, but as it shrinks, the surface area shrinks as well, meaning that no, wait, I'm getting things backwards now. Wait, no, that's if you get it bigger, it would, like, cook itself alive, not if it shrank, never mind. Sorry, ignore what I said.
And this new smaller size is also going to make it near impossible for Eevee to get any oxygen in its lungs, because Eevee's lung volume would be so much smaller compared to the surface area inside of the lungs, it literally wouldn't be able to breathe enough oxygen to survive. In fact, if Eevee was shrunk down small enough, oxygen itself might be too big to enter the lungs at all, or bind to the hemoglobin in its blood.
I mean, okay, actually, something I just thought of before, going back to the whole tall grass thing. If you go back to, like, you know, the pixel games, you know, the 2D Pokemon games, when you walk through tall grass, like, you look at the grass, and the grass is at least around, like, up to here or something on the person. Like, it at least reaches up to their chest. So, assuming, you know, the average 10-year-old's size, what is that, like, I don't know, what was that, oh, that's like 4 feet tall or something? Yeah, so if we go... So 10-year-olds... Average height for a 10-year-old, we'll just say 139 centimeters. What's 139 centimeters in feet and inches? Okay, so about about 4.5 feet. So that means that at the very least, the grass is around 3 feet tall, which you'd think, no, yeah, that's pretty capable of hiding a lot of creatures. Now, granted, I mean, the tall grass does get drastically shorter in, you know, the more in the 3D games, but I don't count those because I haven't played any of the 3D games.
Preventing oxygen from getting to all of its vital organs. All of this means that a Pokemon that was shrunk down would be unable to see, hear, keep warm, or even breathe. Now, for a few moments, or perhaps even a few minutes, that's not a major issue. If we bring this back to the world of evolution, it's possible that a Pokemon that chooses to shrink down could survive for a bit, long enough to be able to get away from a predator before popping back to normal size. But what if someone came around and, oh, I don't know, forced a Pokemon into a metal prison, unable to regrow back to normal size for an indeterminate amount of time? That would mean that our friend Eevee would slowly suffocate and freeze in a dark, silent coffin of our own making. But regardless of whether they're alive or dead inside the ball, we now have another potential problem. See, the idea of capturing our little buddies and shrinking them down to the size of a Pokeball might trigger the creation of a little something called a black hole.
Oh, really? Okay, so they're... Geez, you know, I'm, you know, honestly, I said before that I was wise to, you know, game theories tricks after watching them for so many years, and the thing is, oh, this is going to be related to, you know, Star Trek transporters and stuff like that. This is honestly, like, so weird. It's like, oh, they shrink down, and if they shrink down enough, they turn into black holes. Maybe that's how Gardevoir makes the black holes to protect their trainers. They just grab other Pokemon, shrink them down until they compress into singularities, who knows. But just all of this, like... Granted, as I said before, I haven't played any of the 3D Pokemon games. Like, I stopped when they were still 2D, and, like, none of the 3D ones. I haven't heard anything good enough to really justify me wanting to get them. I mean, like, I think I have Pokemon Arceus on my Switch, but I've literally never played it before. But, like, I don't think it's the whole thing of, again, Pokemon shrinking down has ever been brought up before. So I'm thinking, again, the closest thing that could be going on here was just the fact, like, the people of the past didn't have a full understanding of what was going on, or, of the technology.
Theoretically, any object in the universe that has mass, from the sun to a soul rock, can become a real deal black hole if you compress all of its mass into a tiny, tiny, tiny space.
Yeah, but the thing is, the smaller the initial object is, the smaller you have to make it. Like, what was it? I think if I remember correctly, from what I heard when I looked it up once, was that if you wanted to turn the Earth into a black hole, you would have to compress all the matter on Earth into the size of a pea. Now, think of how big the Earth is compared to a pea. Now the whole thing is, like, I know there are some very big Pokemon, but, with the whole thing of how big a Pokeball actually is, even when they're in their small miniaturized state, as you see in the anime, like, I don't think the size difference is enough that, a black hole would be formed.
This space is known as the object's Schwarzschild radius. For example, if you take the sun and compress it down to a ball with a radius of 3 kilometers, then our sun would spontaneously become a black hole. So if we're squishing sometimes massive Pokemon into really tiny balls, is that small enough to reach its Schwarzschild radius?
No, because again, like, the biggest Pokemon I can think of would be, maybe Wailord, and that's, it's a literal whale. Actual whale sized, again, like, can it, like, into a ball that's just slightly bigger than actually, wait a second. We'll assume that this is the cannon size of, like, a Pokeball, like, and then it shrinks down to, like, half of this when it's in its travel belt form. Like, a whale to that. Yeah, that is some massive shrinkage, but I don't think that's enough to cause a black hole.
Let's take the heaviest Pokemon in the games, which is actually a tie between Cosmoem and Celesteela, both weighing 999.9 kilograms or 2,204.4 pounds. The formula for the Schwarzschild radius is actually super simple, as most of the formula is just constants. It's 2 times the gravitational constant times the mass divided by the speed of light squared. So just plug in the mass of our object and voila! We find that the Schwarzschild radius for the heaviest Pokemon in the games is 1.485 times 10 to the power of minus 24 meters, or 1.485 yoctometers. Yeah, we're in yocto territory now. For context, that's about 2 billion times smaller than the radius of an electron.
What was I just saying?
It's the same effective radius as a neutrino, one of the smallest objects we know about in the universe. At this scale, even the ideas of size and radius start to break down for quantum physics reasons. So yeah, unless Pokemon are able to shrink to Ant-Man levels, we can rest easy knowing that derpy screw-ups like Ash don't have the ability to trigger black holes all across the Pokemon world. Phew. But even if it doesn't trigger a black hole, that doesn't mean that capturing Pokemon won't get very tense. Or should I say, dense? If you followed this channel for a while, you know that we love talking about density, the amount of matter per unit of volume, or DMV. If we're cramming all of that mass into a tiny ball, wouldn't that become denser than the Earth itself and sink to the core, causing problems? Well, let's run the numbers. If we take the mass of the heaviest Pokemon again, 999.9 kilograms, and compress it to the size of a Pokeball, which, according to the wand company who make the official Pokeball replicas, has a diameter of 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters, with the volume of a sphere being pi r squared and the radius being half the diameter, the Pokeball's volume ends up being 220.9 cubic centimeters. Plug that into DMV and you get that Celesteela or Cosmoem, shrunk to just fit inside the Pokeball, would have a density of around 4,526,500 kilograms per cubic meter. That's over 370 times more dense than the densest part of the Earth's core. 4. But that's not even the end of it. If we assume that Pokeballs are instead as small as we've seen them in the anime, around the size of a ping pong ball, then the density shoots up to nearly 30 million kilograms per cubic meter. And if we know that objects that are more dense sink in objects that are less dense, that should mean that a freshly caught Cosmoem should therefore sink to the center of the Earth, right? Actually, no. You see, when we talk about objects sinking into other objects because of density, we're typically talking about two liquids or a solid in a liquid. This is because liquids offer very little resistance to an object falling around them, but two solid objects are different. When you stand on the ground, not only are you pushing down on the ground, but the ground is pushing back with an equal and opposite force. Hence, you don't move. When you think about it, Celesteela and Cosmoem have a weight of just 999.9 kilograms or 2,204 pounds. That is only 1/6 the weight of an African elephant. If the ground can support elephants and their relatively tiny footprints, so could the Earth hold any captured Pokemon in its Pokeball. Still, I wouldn't want to...
I mean, at the same time, though, you're having that, all that weight put into a vastly smaller, a vastly smaller package. So it's pushing all that, it's putting all of that force onto a much smaller, area. Plus, though alternatively, again, the whole thing is, I don't know those two Pokemon, but they both look like they levitate. So there might be something going on with there, because neither of them look like they have legs.
Drop that Pokeball on my foot, and if it falls in the ocean, forget about it. But wait a minute. When Ash captures a Snorlax, it's not like the ball suddenly becomes half a ton. I mean, unless Ash is jacked underneath those spindly arms. All of the mass of the captured...
Can you imagine? Ash is like a reverse Popeye underneath, he's all muscle, underneath the clothes, but then it just stops at his elbows and his forearms that just have no definition at all. Oh god, that'd be weird looking.
Pokemon has to be going somewhere. According to the law of conversion of mass, matter cannot be created or destroyed. So where is all of that Snorlax stuff going? Well, it's not going anywhere. Instead, it's being converted into a different form. Energy, described by arguably the most famous formula in all of physics, E equals mc squared. Matter and energy are really just two sides of the same coin. Matter can be converted into
there is the whole thing where, the Pokemon turns into light.
This means a Pokeball needs to not only capture shrinking Pokemon, they also need to convert some or all of the Pokemon's mass into energy so that you and I are able to pick it up and transport it on our belts. Maybe the anime wasn't so wrong with the energy beams after all. But that is where the rest of Silphco's Pokeball empire comes crumbling down. Let me explain with our pal Eevee again. Eevee has a mass of 6.5 kilograms. Plugging that into E equals mc squared, with c being the speed of light in a vacuum, or 299,792,458 meters per second, we can calculate that an Eevee contains an amount of energy equal to, and hold on to your chairs for this one, 584 quadrillion, 190 trillion, 866 billion, 178,931,466 joules. That is the equivalent of 139,624,968 tons of TNT.
So what you're saying is that essentially every Pokemon trainer in the Pokemon universe has several, the equivalents of several bombs on their, well, not just bombs, several, almost nuclear bomb level bombs on their belts. Okay, good to know.
93,000 times as much energy as the bombs dropped on Hiroshima. That is 40% more powerful than the most powerful thermonuclear bomb ever designed, the Soviet Tsar bomb. So big that even our favorite nuclear scaling website, NukeMap, can't display bombs that big. And that's just the energy to capture an Eevee. If we scale this up to that of Cosmoem or Celesteela, we're dealing with 89 quintillion joules of energy, or 21 gigatons of TNT. All of that mass needs to be converted to energy every time you want to capture your favorite mon, and then reconvert it back into matter whenever youngster Joey wants to throw hands. I mean,
so that what you're telling us is that the Pokemon universe has very good battery technology. Okay.
Clearly, nothing has gone wrong yet, but we're talking about amounts of energy equivalent to apocalyptic-sized bombs, all being contained in an item that costs only 200 Poké Dollars. Now I finally get why Ash's Pikachu is always so hesitant to get in the ball. If he wasn't dead going in, he is almost certainly dead coming out of it. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. World premiere.
Oh, God, okay. Again, a little sad that, I wasn't correct on, how the Pokemon were actually dying when put into the Pokeballs. I mean, I'll fully admit, the loss on that one. But man, I guess this is what happens when, you kind of, when you drop out of, like, the lore and experiencing new games. Like, again, I had never heard of that whole thing where it's like, oh, Pokemon shrink down and stuff like that. Like, that is just weird. And again, I don't think I've ever heard anything like that. Oh, God, again, so weird. I don't have anything else to say on it. I'm really sorry. So I guess I'm just going to end the video here for now. Yeah, so yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.